Well, hi everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I am your host, Bill Whittle, as usual. Hope everybody's doing well. Um, it is the 10th of August, 2023. Hooray! Here we are. Um, don't have anything particular to wind up with or start up with today. I did get a number of people recommending that I go to Cameo over the course of the last several shows, so I did that. Took a look over there. Uh, it's very interesting. I'd like to list my price. The highest price listed there was $2,000, and I'd like to list for 2,500, just so that when you did a search by high to low, that would be, my top. Malcolm McDowell was $100. Wow. And the final two-thirds, if you list the actors by price high to low, final two-thirds is essentially just a it's like a online headshot collection. It's a kind of a unique sort of thing here in California, and I remember it's not quite so prevalent now as it was when I got here, but basically here's how it works. You go into a pizza place or something in Los Angeles, just a little small restaurant, kind of lunch restaurant kind of thing, and you'll see on a wall, let's say, a headshot or an autographed headshot from somebody like Paul Anka or David Hasselhoff or something like that. And so the entire wall will be covered with headshots. Now in like famous places like Paradise Cove or something, they're actual people, but most every time you see a wall full of headshots, it's like one person that you knew, and then every actor that ever came into that restaurant since then went to the owner and said, "Hey, can I put my headshot up on the wall?" So they said, "Sure." It's a strange and ugly business selling shoes when you're the shoes. But anyway, it was really fun. So that was that. Bill does sound a little hoarse today. He's a little. I need a little lubrication, some kind of scotcher or something like that. Well, I honestly really don't have anything that I can think of. So maybe it'd be a time to just pitch into the questions. And this may be one of those rare alignments of planets where if it turns out there's not too many questions, we might even get to the Facebook page. Who knows? Little horse is known as a pony. That's great. That's exactly right. I've got myself. This is my little pony. All right, here we go. Oh, I just got congratulations. Congratulations, you're using the latest version of Firefox. Well, thank you, Firefox. Yeah. Ay. All right, here we go. Pretty exciting, isn't it? Yeah, I know. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time controlling myself too. Member four. Stratosphere Lounge questions and more. Are you sure you can handle another 2 hours of this? I don't want anybody to burn out. From the just the sheer pace of information awesomeness. All right, here we go. Let me just see how many there are first. Oh yeah. We'll get to Facebook tonight. I'm not saying we'll do more than one, but we will get there. That's a promise. Okay, here we go from Joe Roth. Hi, Bill. Hope you and Natasha are doing well. Thank you, Joe. Natasha usually watches the show and gets all the kind words in the comments section, so we're both very, very grateful. So here we go. I've heard you say many times before that you're optimistic about the future because this woke ideology is coming up against the wall of reality. But do you think this will translate into votes and give us the win anytime in the near future? I think there are a lot more people who are on board with this woke and trans insanity than we think, or people just don't believe it's really happening. I'm going to just it's a fairly long question, but it looks really good. So I'm going to just kind of break it up into pieces and forgive me, Joe, if I end up answering part of the question before you ask it. Uh, I am very impressed by what I've read so far about the fourth turning. I'm still very, very early into it, but there's a there it seems to be pretty good evidence um, that history moves on what the Romans called the seculum. I may be mispronouncing that, but essentially what it means is the life is a human life 80 years to 100 years, a long human life, 80 years to 100 years, and that history moves in 80 to 100 year cycles. As these generations, it's like a sine wave. Some are or an equinox. Like some are born in the spring, some are born in the summer, some are born in the fall, some are born in the winter of the giant cycle, and that affects how you are raised as a child, and it also affects what happens to the world when you grow up. And according to this this theory, which has got some pretty compelling historical evidence, I think they wrote the first one. There's a new version out now called The Fourth Turning is Upon Us or something like that. I thought I'd read the first book before I read the second book, but I'm just funny like that. So having written this back in the end of the 90s, they expected that crisis would continue and that the crisis would come to a head, if it's on time, sometime around 2025. I thought, how about that? So the reason I bring that up is because the point of this, and I do not remember who recommended that book to me, but it was somebody in the Stratosphere Lounge comment section. I'm pretty sure they were on Twitch. When they, or actually, come to think about it, I think it might have been a question like this one. But the point they made was that when this kind of chaos period comes, on the other side of the chaos period, none of the institutions really look the same. That there's a fundamental difference in things, and you cannot start building again until you clear the brush out. And that, especially more than the historical evidence, convinces me that these guys are onto something. That it's a quality of human beings. It's how we're hardwired. I don't think there's anything we can do about it. And I'm not sure we should, even if we could. But what we're basically saying, if this is true, is you get one generation away from trouble, war, generally speaking. So that first generation that experienced the war, they want structure, they want peace, they want law and order. They especially want law and order. They've had enough loud explosions to last them for a long time. Then 20 years after the crisis, in round numbers, 20, 25 years after the crisis, the children that these people that went through the chaos start to come of age, and they've been raised by parents who went through this, so they have a strong sense of it from their parents, but they didn't actually experience it themselves. Then the third generation comes along, comes of age, and they hear their parents talking about their grandparents, but it's barely there. By the time you get to the fourth generation, everything has been so stable and so secure. You're 60, 70, 80 years away from the last serious threat that the country faced. And so they just tend to think, well, why would we not think that everything's going to be okay? Everything's been okay my entire life. Everything's been okay my dad's entire life. And in fact, everything was pretty much okay my grandfather's entire life, which would be boomers in this case. And so you get to the point where you just I think what the species does is the species just sort of sits on its laurels and just says, all right, I think we pretty much got this covered. The building cycle, the spring cycle of this 80 to 100 year seculum is when everybody's constructing these things. The second quarter is when it reaches maturity and everybody's really in full flower and is it really working. And then the next step is people start to have doubts. Sudden doubts come out of nowhere like they did in the 60s and 70s in this last cycle, according to these guys. And then finally things just kind of fall apart because nobody believes in it anymore. And around you go. So when it comes to things like about the people that believe in the woke ideology, I just look at the woke ideology as this cycle's version of any other brand of insanity. The previous cycle, the Roaring '20s, were all about, at least in the public mind. We're a time of tremendous moral decay, and these women are flappers, and women want the vote, and all of this, just this kind of hedonistic, decadent society that at least that was the perception. And our enemies overseas saw that too. The Germans and the Japanese both thought that there'd be nothing to it. They'd just knock us off without any trouble whatsoever. And they didn't realize that Pearl Harbor was what started the put the match to all of this built-up dead scrub grass, started this fire. And when the fire was burned down, they were in a completely different world, and we started building up the institutions. When I think about what I like about America, in terms of my ideal of America, it's generally post-war America, I would say 45 to 65, 1945 to 1965. It's one of the reasons why the Mace Mattingly thing appeals to me is that I've used the term for a while now, America at the height of its powers. We're certainly not at the height of our powers now, and that's the bad news. But the good news is if you buy this cyclical view of history, then it's not permanent. They were saying in the book that Americans, more than any people in the world, have a linear sense of time, that we believe that time goes from here to there, and wherever that line is going, that's where it's going. So if things are going up and looking good, then we're the most optimistic people in the world. If it starts looking like the future's going down, we get very morose. The authors make the case that time is in fact cyclical, at least in terms of human experiences, and that as a general rule, each cycle consists of growth, maturation, stagnation, destruction, but every time that thing goes around, you get a little higher, because you don't destroy in any cycle what was built on the previous cycles. Don't destroy all of it anyway. So I think that's a really good way to look at this whole woke thing, is that this is not even a philosophy or an ideology so much as it's just a form of, actually I've said laziness, but I'll tell you what it is. It's actually a form of boredom. I really think that's the best way to describe it. It's a form of boredom. I have seen people, we would call them Karens generally speaking, get on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, and when they see something that really, 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 really bothers them, and most everything does, I realize, okay, man, this guy's serious, because he has broken out his most angry animated emoji, the one that goes, smoke comes out the ears. That's it. That's the limit of his or her, mostly her, I think, engagement. Wow, this must have really upset you to go all the way to the red-faced, ear-steaming rage emoji. And when you look at it that way, you realize how kind of lazy it is. Just, it's just okay. I'm very upset about this. I'll bring my worst emoji out. And now that I've done my piece to save the world and eliminate injustice, I'll just go on to the next one. Probably the best way to put it is these are not serious times. And I think we're headed for serious times. And so when I talk about the sense that I've had for quite a long time that this wrecking ball of reality is going to come along and smash all of this nonsense, this theory would back up that gut instinct. That's the bad news in terms of, I think things are going to get worse. The good news is that I had thought that these cycles were on the order of hundreds and hundreds of years, and that each civilization got one of them. No. By their count, I think Gen X, by their count, is the 13th American generation. And so we have one of these big cycles every 4 generations, every 80 to 100 years, 20 years per generation, 2025, so general terms. And so I'm a little loath to try to predict things anymore, because when the book was recommended to me, they said, should we still be trying to fight this stuff, or should we start thinking about what new institutions we can help plant that look like they would work on the other side of the wildfire? And I thought, yeah, that just rang me like a bell. Absolutely. I have no trust in money anymore. With $35,000 billion owed, Money is not money anymore. I don't know what's going to happen. I know that people are living very comfortable lives, and most people are hardworking and productive. And so, if that system were to completely collapse, I have no doubt whatsoever that that sensible people would figure out a way to trade something. So I don't see that as catastrophic. But this idea about balancing the budget is just it's insane. It's insane. You'd have to run surpluses. You'd have to run $35,000 billion of surpluses to pay this back. There was a time, and when I say there was a time, I mean, well, certainly before Obama and probably before Clinton, where the amount of money that we owed to ourselves, at least through the debt, if you could just hold the budget steady, if you could just balance the budget, then your economy could outgrow those debts. There's just more and more stuff, and you just bring in more and more revenues, balance the budget, you pay that bet down. Those days are long gone. I don't have any confidence in law enforcement anymore. Let me rephrase that. I don't have any confidence in the rule of law in this country anymore. I just don't. I've seen too many cases where top level Democrats just get away with murder, and not only not covered by the press, but are covered up by the press. And then I see them going on these witch hunts and 3 indictments or 5 or 60 or however many times they want to indict Donald Trump because they're afraid of him. I don't believe in the sense of the rule of law anymore. That doesn't mean I'm a lawless person, and it doesn't mean I would treat any of you fine folks lawlessly. I'm just saying I no longer have confidence in it as an institution. I no longer have confidence in federal law enforcement. And I'm seeing a lot of stuff in local law enforcement that I don't like. Lots of kind of, and in the military as well, I'm sorry to say. This kind of, I'm a sergeant, and when I tell you to do something, you're going to do it kind of thing. This is because we're recruiting people who hate the country to serve in the armed forces. That's a brilliant strategy, and that can't be an accident either, by the way. So, something's going to happen. Now, the question is what? One thing that kind of, I think, throws a real monkey wrench into the system, into this cyclical history system, is this. This is the first cycle ever in human history where the kind of full-scale civilizational wars that did the big cleaning, it's the first time in history where that's inconceivable. This is my opinion, and obviously I can be proven wrong on this, although I'd like to not be. But having done the Cold War series and looking at really living in it, and also in the Empire of Terror, living inside the mind of the Soviet system, when I look back on the Cold War and I think about the fact that on 2 separate occasions, Soviet commanders believed they were under American attack and had absolute ironclad standing orders not to launch an attack but to retaliate. And in both cases, the humanity of those men stopped this nuclear exchange because the stakes were astronomical. I have heard it said that that in private, even Ronald Reagan, who I consider to be a pretty hard-nosed guy, had admitted, this is third-hand story, I don't know if it's true, but basically had said that, was asked the question directly, if you as President of the United States, if you were President of the United States and we suffered a full-scale nuclear attack from the Soviet Union, would you retaliate with everything we have? And he said no. No, I wouldn't. So, I don't know. So what I'm saying is, if this theory is correct and nobody pushed the button when the button was flashing red and demanding to be pushed, they still didn't push the button because nuclear weapons have made war so horrible. Not the least of which is that it doesn't just affect the young men who go out and do the fighting. First people to go up in a flash are the guys making the decision to go to war. So what that does, I don't know. It's probably going to diffuse things out a little bit. I still think that the chaos of the next cycle is largely internal to the West. That this crisis of confidence that we've been seeing since at least 2000, and this increasing lack of patriotism, this destruction of the family, this increase in drug use, the coarsening of debate and of young people's minds, all of it is, I think, the crisis that we're going to have to face. And I don't know what form that's going to take, but it's going to have to be a pretty big shock. And I did ask myself as I was reading this again, I'm just barely into it, could the COVID situation have been that event? But I don't think so, because they say the definition of this chaos period is that it resets things. It basically just, boils things away. Now, I see a lot of people in the comment section are just completely depressed about this, and I'd like to just tell you what I told my wife, who's also looking pretty sad when I was talking about what these guys were saying. So if the last great cycle was World War II, and you think World War II, and you think, oh my God, I'm in Berlin, I'm going to be firebombed, or I'm in Stalingrad, or I'm in London, or I'm in Tokyo, or I'm on a destroyer in the Pacific, or I'm a tank commander in Normandy. That's what you put yourself when you hear the words World War II. But that event was essentially academic if you lived in Mexico or, Thailand, and any large number of places. It was just going on over there. I rather think that's going to be the case here. I think that whatever chaos the cycle brings is going to be confined to the cities. And since I'm on a little roll here, it's got to be the cities, because the cities are over. The need for cities is over, economically finished. That has never happened before. The industrial era, the invention of machinery, meant that people had to, that civilization's wealth and riches and progress and work, jobs, you had to go from the farms to the factories, because you needed large numbers of people in close proximity to each other, so that you can send the metal that you pick up from this train station over to the car manufacturing plant, and they send it over to another. It's all got to be centralized. Now that we have an information age, you don't need cities anymore. And if you don't need them, then they're not going to be self-sustaining. Lots of people love living in the cities. Mostly left-wing intellectuals love living in cities. It's inconceivable to me personally. I can imagine myself living in New York for a couple of years, but the idea that I would grow up and never have my feet touch the grass is just inconceivable to me. Whenever you saw those old movies, from the 50s and 60s, and you saw those kids out there, or the 30s, for that matter, 30s and 40s, you see these young kids out there playing stickball in the street. They got a broom handle, they got a tennis ball or something, and they're playing on concrete. It's inconceivable to me, as a kid who went out and played on the grass and on a baseball diamond. It's inconceivable. What is that? So I think the evidence is extremely strong that the crisis that we're looking at facing, according to this cycle, will be I don't want to say destruction, the dissolution of cities throughout the West, particularly in America. And when I mentioned if you lived in Mexico, World War II was just a newspaper headline. I think for most Americans that's probably going to be the case too. That things are going to get real ugly, because they're getting real ugly now. And as more and more people lose faith in the system, as more and more shopkeepers don't know, they know that they can't call the police because the police won't do anything, because the political system above them is corrupt, and so on and so forth. So the police who are any good leave, and the people who can move, and it gets more and more and more concentrated. Then that's it. And you think, okay, so what's the big deal if Los Angeles were to sort of exit stage left? See what I did there? How would that make your life or my life any different? Probably wouldn't, if it was just Los Angeles. But if it's every big city, then that's going to displace a lot of people. And that's, I think, if I had to guess, that's what I think it is. Whittle points out cities grew up around transportation hubs. Those hubs will still be needed. I think it's probably more correct to say that the transportation hubs built up around cities, although it depends what you call transportation. Virtually all the big cities in America in the beginning of this country were located on the coast because it's easier to ship things by water than any other way. You just float it over. So yes, there's no question Long Beach and these other ports, it's got to come in one place. And you're not going to start building entirely new rail lines and all of this stuff. But the need to be there, I just don't see it. Just take an insurance company, for example. Downtown Los Angeles, there is no such thing. There is no downtown Los Angeles in the way that there's a center to other cities. It's just, so take an insurance company. Some of those towers downtown either were or are largely leased by insurance companies. So they're paying big money because they're putting down a big footprint in California, in the heart of the city, and they're paying all these California taxes, and they have to pay these salaries, and they have to pay the building upkeep, and they have to pay for the air conditioning, the lights, all this stuff in order to run their insurance business. But that's largely because prior to the information age, you needed people in the same place. You just simply said, I've got this document, okay, take it up to the 7th floor. And if you were dealing with other big businesses, insuring them, then you could just simply go across the street and go to a restaurant, meet the other guy there, and you do things that way. Once the information age gets here and we have talking phones, which is what we're working on right the second, you and me, then the physical need for everybody to live on top of each other goes, the economic need for people to live on top of each other goes away. And when the need for people to live on top of each other goes away, then people start having different thoughts. Have you ever, one of the things, I have no doubt that Media Matters will take this out of context and run with it. But basically, if you look at a city that's been run by Democrats for 70, 80, 90, 100 years or so, look at Baltimore. Baltimore in the 50s and 60s was completely integrated. Working class towns, working class people, black and white, were living next to each other. One person, dad could make enough money to buy a house and feed the family, and Baltimore was a lovely place, and so was Detroit and all the rest of them. And then reasons, and now it's a special kind of hell. And I've often wondered why people don't just get out of there. What could be worse than this? And the reason I'm addressing this issue is because it's going to be of importance. It's so unusual to me because, well, ironic may be a better word. Many of you know what I'm talking about when I talk about the New Yorker cover. I think it was New Yorker. Virtually positive it was New Yorker. If not, it was Esquire magazine. And it was a cartoon that was drawn by somebody who lived in New York. And basically it was a map of New York looking west. So 3/4 of the map is, here's New York City, here's this, and here, here's the Hudson and so on. On the other side of the Hudson is New Jersey. Then just a little further off is the Ohio. And beyond that's a little bump called the Rockies. And on the other side is Los Angeles, the ocean. And the idea being that if you live in New York, that's how you see the world. That's their view of the world. And what's fascinating to me about this is, if you ask somebody who lived in a city, let's take New York because it's a great example. If you asked a New Yorker if they thought they were more or less educated than people who lived in flyover country, every one of them, I guarantee, would say we're more educated because we live in New York City. But my experience has been people who live in New York City don't know anything about the rest of the country, don't know anything about it at all, and live in these little bubbles of limousines and high-rise apartments, high-rise office buildings, and I find them to be the most narrow-minded, parochial people we have in the country. So the rich want to live in cities because they get to socialize with other rich people. Businesses have been in cities because it was economically necessary for them to do so, but it's not anymore. In fact, the economic incentive is for them to leave the cities. Is much, much cheaper to run that same insurance company through people working at home, especially if you're not in Los Angeles. So, hang on a second. Marusha Dark says, one of my teachers was from India and told us about how some of the older rural people there didn't even realize there was a country outside India. Yeah, we forget how small-minded we can be. So I'm just trying to game out this whole cities thing. The cities are dying. There's no question about it. And if you're expecting the current institutions to save them, you're going to be waiting a long time. I think they're irredeemably corrupt. I think the system has been irredeemably changed to the point where you cannot elect somebody now in an American city who will fix the city, because the people who are intent on looting everything from the mayor's office have got the system so rigged and so corrupted. It's just, no, it's not going to happen. So Los Angeles is driving the middle class out. California is driving the middle class out as fast, as hard as they can. They want to live in a binary world where it's the rich elite and then the guys who will do the garbage and the gardening. And that system is so entrenched in cities that I know there's no way out of it, because every day the cities get worse and worse and worse. Let's take San Francisco. There is no more Fisherman's Wharf. It just doesn't exist anymore. What used to be this bustling center of tourism and trade and marketing and all of it, it's just boarded shut. Nobody's there anymore because people could just walk into whatever store they wanted to, take whatever they wanted, and it didn't matter whether you called the cops or not. The cops can't do anything because the mayor's office said you can't arrest these people. So did the city attorney. Marusha said they said that about New York before Giuliani. Yes, but that was an entirely different world. There was still a rule of law when Giuliani saved New York. There was still respect for the institutions. It's not a question of how bad physically things have gotten. It's a question of how bad morally and politically they've gotten. It's inconceivable now. It's inconceivable now. So I'm not convinced that there's and by the way, yes, Giuliani saved New York for the length of time he was mayor, and then for a significant part of Bloomberg's term. And then by the time he finished, de Blasio started working on destroying it, and now it's back to the rat hole it used to be before they came. And Ripon Ellsworth says morals are dying, sadly, and that's it. The morals are dying, but they're not dying everywhere. See, this is the thing that I find actually encouraging. And as George points out, there was also an electoral system in which Giuliani could have won back then. So, yes, it's true that morals are dying, but this is the thing that I don't want people to come out of this. I never want people to come out of this show feeling worse than they did coming into it. So let's just talk about, winter is coming, say the authors of The Fourth Turning. So why don't we think about preparing for winter and trying to minimize the amount of frostbite we get? When you say morals are dying, it's true that morals are dying. Barbara Durant says decorum is dying, civility is dying. Absolutely true. But it's dying on a, if you'll pardon the expression, on a federal level. It's dying from the top down. People like you and me treat each other decently, and people like you and me treat other people decently all the time. So it's not like we've all got this infection. It's just a situation where termites are in this building. We can't get them out. So people who want to stay in the termite-infested building are going to be hurt when that building comes down. But most of us have the common sense just to get out of there. So what happens after that? I don't know. But I do think that this idea of trying to stop this thing now, because I've been trying to stop this thing for 15, 16, 17 years full time. It's not possible, and it's not a question of a failure of us or we didn't try hard enough or whatever. It's just this is how human beings are built. This is the This is the same thing as the Earth's orbit around the sun. There is going to be a winter. There is going to be a spring, a summer, and a fall if you live any significant distance north of the equator. It's going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it except for plan and prepare. So there's that. So let's just see what else we got here as this question, because I said I'd get to Facebook and already hung on one answer here. Let's see what we got. So he was asking about whether or not this was people waking up to woke ideology was real or not, how many people actually believe this stuff. I think there are a lot more people on board with this woke and trans insanity than we think, or people just don't believe it's really happening. I think almost all people who identify as Democrat or liberal are going to vote D no matter what, even if they hate a lot of what's going on. I'm going to stop again briefly this time. Yes, but the most important statistic out there now, which I saw a week ago, is that Republicans now are +3 in terms of when you ask people whether they identify as Republican or Democrat, 3% more people identify as, so whatever the number is, if it's include the independents, 45% of the population calls themselves Democrats and 48% call themselves Republican. We're +3. Now, we have been +3 twice in the 21st century for a period of about a year. Most of the time, we're down 6 or down 11 or down 12. When you have more people identifying as Republican than Democrat, that is a really, 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 really important statistic, because that is evidence that people have had enough of this. Lifelong members of the Democratic Party are just plain leaving it and going. And by the way, I'm sure it happens, but I don't know a single person ever in my life have I met anybody who started out as a Republican and became a Democrat. I know they exist. I've just never seen anybody go the other way. It's pretty much a one-way street. People are idealistic. They want to believe these things are true. They give it a try. They vote for it for their entire lives as they go around in the big cycle of the secular. They get older and they realize, for many people realize, it just didn't work. It's just not working. We've thrown trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars at poverty, and poverty's gotten worse. Some people are able to put 2 and 2 together. Some people aren't. But we're +3, and that is a real indicator. Let's see. If we don't win anything this next election cycle, then I fear the system will get so corrupted that there will be no way to fix things at the ballot box. I still think at least 50% of the country would still vote for Democrats, even if they don't really like what's going on. I'll refer you back to what I just said, Joe. I don't know if it's a majority of the country. That's not the point. The point is the trend line. And the trend line is the more progressive Democrats become, the more people identify as Republican. That's the dynamic that you need to keep in mind. If it was going the other way, then I would say, okay, well, now it's very clear which direction this country's going to head. If it turned out as things got more and more and more woke and more progressive, more and more people went to the left, and Democrats were +6, +9, +18, then I'd say, yes, you're right. But it doesn't appear to be going that way. So I think the wrecking ball is actually doing its job. Now, with that said, we're talking about +3. We should be +40. But the trend line I like. I say the D label trumps everything else to a lot of people. Do you think we're just outnumbered? Again, we used to be. If you add the insane people plus the unaware people who really don't know what's going on, I think that puts them in the majority a few points. But the state's Democrats win is by huge margins. Okay, let me interrupt one more time. Let's not forget, whenever there's a presidential election or a national level election, a big win, if you're not in Florida, right, a big win is, 56, 57% to 43%. That's a big win in American politics, but that is essentially half. So I just think that the reason I'm bringing that up is because more or less half the elections go our way. me rephrase that. For every election there's held in this country, Republicans usually get within 5 or 10% of 50%. I think that's probably how I want to put it. But that's with the Democrats owning everything. They own social media. They control the information. They control the news. They control entertainment. They control music. They control comedy. They control your speech. They control the algorithms. They control all of these things. And we're still at 50%. What does that tell you about what people would think or are thinking if you take that incredible 40-point headwind away from us? I'm not asking for a tailwind. I'm just saying, take that 40-knot headwind away and you get a better idea of how the country really thinks. The country is more or less 50-50 in the face of total cultural, economic, cultural and political and information control by one party. Think about that. Think about that. That is something. All right, so moving on with the question here. So what Joe's saying here, just catch up here. The states we win in the Electoral College are just by a few points, but the states Democrats win is by huge margins. We used to win Texas by over 1.5 million votes, and then one election cycle we win by only 800,000 votes. The states that people are fleeing will always be blue by large margins, but they're tipping the scale in states that used to be in our column. Other than Florida and some southern states, purple states are getting bluer and red states are becoming purple. I'm not 100% sure of that. I used to believe this was revealed gospel to me, that the people leaving California were going to places like Texas and turning Texas blue. Now, Jeremy Boring has mustered some economic firepower, and Daily Wire did a fairly in-depth study on this, and what he told me personally was that it turns out that the people leaving California and going to Texas are actually turning Texas redder, that the people who are leaving California and going to Texas are more conservative than the Democrats in Texas. And let's not forget, if you're looking at long-term trend lines, you're thinking, wow, we used to have 1.5 million, and now we've only got 800,000. Texas is Lyndon Baines Johnson territory. And so I'm not 100% convinced that this idea of states getting bluer is true. But I will grant you this, and this is another important thing that people need to be aware of when they're looking at this political situation. So if you take all the conservatives as an example, if you take all the conservatives out of California and disperse them to 5 states, right? Utah, Nevada, Idaho, Florida, and Texas. Take all of them out of California and disperse them to 5 states. What does that do to the electoral map? Well, first of all, it makes blue California much bluer, but that's no loss because California wasn't yours anywhere. It makes those 5 individual states slightly redder, if you're following this argument about that, which I believe is true. And so federal elections now, I think, are going to be determined by winning the non-corrupt states. That's how I look at it. States that are irredeemably corrupt are gone, but they've been gone for quite a long time. Every national presidential election for the last, I don't know how long, so Reagan, I guess. California has been so solidly blue that the Democrats start the race, a fifth of the way down the field. They start on the 30-yard line. We start on the goal line. So if you got California in your pocket, that's a big win. But the other thing that happens over time is, as this process continues, California gets fewer and fewer and fewer electoral votes. So it gets bluer and bluer, but less and less powerful. And the states that people are moving to, if the conservatives and the business people either leave because they're conservative or they've been converted by the catastrophe in the blue states, those numbers, electoral counts, should go up. So this to me seems to be the calamity, is the aftermath, or not even the aftermath. What is going to happen? Right now, more than half of Americans live in cities. I believe that number occurred while I was at PJTV. I think we did a story on that. Somewhere around 2008, 9, somewhere in there, I don't know, maybe 2011, somewhere in there. Around the time of the Tea Party thing, there was an announcement made that statistically more Americans were urban than rural. I don't know what that does to the suburbs, but that's basically what they said. Okay, so now you've got a situation that's going to affect half of the American public. But it doesn't affect you, and it will not affect Natasha and me. Because we have the means to escape it. And I think everybody who can escape it will escape it. It's just a question of when. There's obviously a lot to keep people out here in terms of draw. But obviously, no matter how nice a house is, no matter how comfortable it is, and how spectacular the view is, and how much you love it and got invested in it, if that house is burning down around you, your chances are going to be, you're going to be moving, whether you want to or not. I said this a couple times on the show. When I go to Tennessee to do something for Daily Wire series or election night or something, I meet a lot of people who join Daily Wire out here in Los Angeles, including Jeremy and Drew and a bunch of other people. And we both have the same exchange, and the answer is the same both times, from the people that stay and the people that go. How's Los Angeles, Bill? It's like, I don't want to stay and I don't want to leave. How's Tennessee, Jeremy? I like it here. I like this better than California, but I miss California very, very much. So this, I think, is where the fault lines are going to be. The catastrophe part of it, the violence part of it, is going to come at that economic dividing line between where you can afford to leave and where you cannot afford to leave. And what I was saying earlier, half an hour ago, about being called out for this by Media Matters, but if you look at like the underclass in Baltimore now, you ask yourself, why don't these people go? Most of the people, even in Baltimore today, most of the people by numbers are innocent people who are just trying to get home without getting shot. So why don't they just leave? That's the prosaic quality of living in a city. Many people have never been out of the city. I'm very curious to know, and I bet you the number is well over 1 million. It might be several millions. I want to know how many people who live in Los Angeles County, have ever been to the beach. I'll bet it's a significant number of people who have never been to the beach. I sometimes wonder, when I'm flying over LA, I look down at the city that I live in, and I wonder what percentage of the people down there have never been on a commercial airline. Most of the time, that thought doesn't occur to us. Nobody watching this show. I'm sure there'll be some exceptions when you count the millions of eyeballs that are on the show every week, but nevertheless, I don't think I know anybody personally who's never been on an airplane, and chances are pretty good that you don't know anybody who's never been on an airplane either. But there are large numbers of people down in those cities who have never been on airplanes, ever, because they've never had any reason to be on an airplane. So what happens when that world becomes unlivable? It's approaching untenable. Pretty soon after that, it'll be unlivable. The people who can afford to leave will go. They'll go from the top down. The richest people will leave first, and then you'll work your way down, and then you'll get to the point where they can no longer afford to leave, or morally and ideologically, they're so used to living in the cities that the idea of leaving it, even going to another city, is inconceivable to them. And what other cities would they go to? I mean, if you leave Los Angeles, are you going to go to Baltimore? Are you going to go to Chicago? So, Time Pair says, I've wanted to leave for 15 years. Don't believe I can afford it. I'm right with you, pal. I'm 100% with you. But if it turned out that you could hear the rioting outside your house, you would take your family in your car and you would borrow money and you would get out of there if you had to. You could, if you had to, and live with friends or relatives somewhere else until you could get a job. That's what I see is going to be happening. People in red states are going to be dealing with a lot of newcomers, and unlike the people who leave voluntarily, the people who are forced out are not conservative. But I think forcing them out will make them conservative. Jefferson had it right. It's the cities. And it's not because I don't like cities. It's because of what happens to people in the cities. So I'll just wrap with this for you, Joe. Why are blue states blue? Why are red states red? Why are all cities blue? Why? Why are small towns red? Why are big cities blue? Why? Well, because people break down into, hey, get your shot glasses ready. People break down into R or K. They're either collectivists or they're individualists. That's how people tend to go. And cities are, by definition, collectivist places. There was a better point than this, and I just completely lost it, but it'll come back to me in a second here. So all of the ills of a city come down to one thing. The reason cities are blue and dying is because of the structure of a large city compared to either the suburbs, because a suburb is essentially a small town that's just somewhat spread out. And it's the one thing only, and that thing is anonymity. If I live in a small town and I rob a convenience store, the people who I'm robbing know me, and I know them, and I know I'm taking food off of them. I see them every day. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody else. You don't get to be anonymous in a small town. Strangers can come into a small town, but small town people, their radar goes up immediately when they see somebody they don't know, and rightfully so. Pay extra close attention to those people. So if I live in a small town and I decide I'm going to mug the school teacher, then the chances are practically 100% that the school teacher I'm going to mug is my school teacher. And so I am going to be caught and I am going to be punished because the people who are going to be punishing me know me, and they also know everybody else, and they're going to say, we don't want this particular bacillus in our community, so we're going to throw him in jail. Now, when you look at all these people that are doing all of this looting now, it's not even looting anymore. It's not even looting anymore. It's people simply walking into stores and walking out with armloads of stuff. This is why there is no more San Francisco anymore, because San Francisco is the most progressive city in the nation. And there is no more San Francisco. It doesn't exist because stores cannot survive when the law allows people to simply walk in and grab things. So a number of people here have said, say they're in small towns. Battle Smurf says, try that in a small town. Yeah, just try it in a small town. Try it and find out. I got my F-bombs out of the way for the season show or two ago. Try it and find out. Try it and find out. You don't have anonymity. And anonymity is the source of all of our poisons and the source of all of our troubles. Anonymity is the trouble. Because anonymity means there are no consequences. Many years ago, boy, this might have been before I started doing this. This might have been before eject. It's been a while. But many, many years ago, somebody explained to me how things go south from a government level. And I haven't talked about this for a little while, so it'll be fresh to some people. This person sat me down and said, Bill, the problem with government and government spending is like this. He said that spending money, just spending money, there are 4 ways to spend money. I said, okay. I would have thought there'd be hundreds. No, there's only 4 ways to spend money. He said, you can spend your own money on yourself. You can spend your own money on someone else. You can spend someone else's money on you, and you can spend someone else's money on someone else. That's it. I said, okay. He said, if you spend your own money on yourself, category 1, then you are going to want maximum value. You're going to want the very best that you can get for the smallest possible price. That's the best way to make a decision. That is why capitalism works, because when you're buying something, you want the highest possible price at the lowest possible cost. That's category 1 spending. That's personal spending, and that is not how anything works out there. He said if you're in category 2, where you're spending other people's money on you, I might have gotten those backwards, but you get the idea. If you're spending other people's money on you, then you don't care about the cost. All you want is quality. If it's somebody else's money, I want gold-plated toilets. Do I need a gold-plated toilet? No. Sorry, K1 Fate says this is Milton Friedman's argument. It must have been Friedman. But stay with Friedman on this. He's saying if you are spending somebody else's money, then there is no incentive to save. Get the gold-plated toilet. It doesn't matter. Get all the value you can because you're not paying for it. Now, category 3, if you're spending your money on someone else, now you're in precisely the opposite situation. You don't care about the quality at all. You don't know the person. You don't know the person at all. You just want to spend as little money as possible because the work that earned that money is going out the door. And so you want to spend as little money as possible. Quality be damned. So in category 1, quality is important and saving is important. Category 2, quality is important and saving money doesn't matter. Category 3, saving is important and quality doesn't matter, which leads you to category 4, where you spend other people's money on other people, and that's where neither quality nor saving matter. It doesn't matter how much it costs, and it doesn't matter how good it is. And all of government spending is quadrant 4 spending. I just said, that's it. That's the key to the universe. I understand everything. Now I got it. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. And this applies to small towns. Because in a small town, there is no spending other people's money on other people. There are no other people. Everybody is known to everybody else. If you're a crook and a swindler, if you cheat somebody on a real estate deal, you shake hands with somebody, let's say, you do a handshake deal because you live in a small town, and then the guy goes out and breaks that agreement. Is he legally able to do that? Yes, because you didn't have a contract. You did not have a contract. He burned you. Now, is that guy going to burn anybody else? No, he's not. In a small town, he's not. Because in a small town, he will be, not only will he be lit up as an unreliable guy not to do business with, but the people around him will punish him for having screwed that guy because that guy is Jim. That's Jim. You screwed Jim, Bob, and now you're going to pay the consequences because I know Jim and I know you, Bob, and that was wrong. In a city or in show business or something, you don't have a ironclad contract. You screw the studio, screw the actor, screw whoever. It doesn't matter. So this is how these cities corrupt behavior. They corrupt behavior through anonymity. If you go down into the subway, you can mug somebody with a pretty good assurance that you won't see those people again. And if you do, you will see them in a crowd, which you can disappear into, and which that person is unlikely to disturb by saying, "Stop, thief." So, cities breed crime and immorality. The people that create our entertainment and our information live in cities. That gets telegraphed across the healthy parts of the country, comes down to us through the airwaves, through information control, the web, the pop culture, all of it. All of this poison from New York to Los Angeles, the transcontinental poison, flies over our heads in airplanes and radio waves and just rains ash down on the center of the country. But it's not enough ash to kill the crops. It's enough ash to be a pain, but it's not enough to kill the crops. The cities, on the other hand, are nothing but ash. And people are going to leave the ash. And they're going to want to bring a lot of ash with them. And that's something you can bet your ash on. Somebody forgive me for that. All right, moving on. GK Masterson. Hey, Bill, I'm still waiting to get assigned a truck, so I might be home in a couple of weeks. I was wondering if you've been able to see Sound of Freedom yet and what you think of the new system Angel Studios is setting up to bypass the Hollywood Democrat gatekeepers. I'm still planning to go see the film myself while I'm home, so no spoilers. I have not seen it yet. We are going to be ripping, I can get away with this. Ripping Ellingsworth in the chat stream said that the people I was mentioning earlier are just a bunch of ash holes. Precisely correct. And so are the cities. I have not seen it yet. It's name-dropping time at a goodbye event for Gary Sinise just a week before the film opened. I was sitting, I think I mentioned this 2 shows ago or something. I was sitting 4 feet away from Jim Caviezel, and I knew nothing about the Sound of Freedom. It hadn't opened. I'd never heard of it. I knew nothing about it. And I remember looking at Jim and thinking, this guy deserves better than what he got. He was openly Christian, Passion of the Christ, all of this stuff. He could have been a Tom Cruise, should have been a Tom Cruise, a better actor than Tom Cruise. But it just didn't happen, and I feel real bad for Jim Caviezel. And then 6-7 days later, all of a sudden, people are just doing nothing but talking about Jim Caviezel. And you've got a runaway hit on your hands here at essentially very little money, so hey, hooray. And whoever super chat I missed, I would like to apologize for that. So I saw a $5 super chat go by, and I just decided to try and stay on target for once. Hang on, this is interesting. Just in the last topic, so Vlad Mordekaiser, I would say, Bill, I've been raised by my high-ranked communist parents in Brazil to be part of the intelligentsia. As some top philosopher, there are so many small details and facts that not a single American political commentator is talking about. I wish I could help you with one of those. Well, we're accepting membership at BillWhittle.com, and that's the quickest way you can help me with that. I'll get back to Sound of Freedom in a minute, just a short minute. I just want to address that point. The way they describe themselves, the beautiful people, the intelligentsia, we're the intellectuals. We've got intelligence, intellect. Intellectualism is intelligence. It's been left in the back of the fridge for 6 months. It's not intelligence. It's just something that once looked like intelligence. And it's the byproduct of somebody who could be intelligent, but they're not because they chose to be intellectual, which is lazy and dumb. But they flattered themselves, and there were two defining moments for me that knocked me out of the intellectual orbit. The idea of considering that as something that I was proud of being. You're a smart guy. You're not as smart as you think you are, Bill. And that was all I had. I was like rolling up a character for Travel or something, and I just like 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 intelligence 20 1 1 1 1 or 10 or whatever. So that was just the neon sign I wore around my neck. And when I started doing the public speaking, second or third event, I was actually already started to talk to a fairly large crowd, and afterwards I take questions, and I take questions until they turn the lights off. I'm the last person out of a room because they're paying me to be there. And one of the questions was from a guy who was pretty much overweight, and he was wearing coveralls, which I don't see much of in California. And to be perfectly honest with you, he reminded me of Junior Samples from Hee Haw. And I had a flash of a thought at that moment. And I thought, how come I can't have the cool audience, How come I can't have the smart audience? How come I can't have the glamorous audience? And then just, once I back the other, it's like, this guy, Bill, knows more about 30 things than you do, and he probably knows more about 1 or 2 things than anybody in the world. He's probably an expert at least 1 or 2 things in the world, and you need to readjust your attitude, Jack. And so I did. And then several years earlier, I was out here working with the beautiful people, the so-called intellectuals, and there was a producer on a show. I was on a show called Classmates, which Facebook put into the ground, and rightfully so. They wanted to charge you money to hook up to your, high school friends. But they did a TV show for, 6 months, and it was a complete failure. I was working on that show, and they had a producer there whose 3 initials, I don't remember what they were, but let's just say she was just known as DMJ. I honestly don't remember what they are. She was very tall. She's like 6'3", mixed race, and probably about 23. And I was putting together a story. So we were telling stories about people who met through Classmates. So I put together this story, and I laid this stuff out, and I forget what the exact what the point was. It was some kind of general knowledge thing. And she said, "You need to take that out." I said, "Why would I take that out?" She said, because people in flyover country won't be able to understand it. I'm sorry, I don't understand. No, it's too difficult for them to follow, Bill. You need to realize that a lot of our audiences, doesn't live in California. They're not smart enough to follow this story that you put together. And before she said another word, I said to myself, I know for an absolute fact, because I've heard you say, You didn't graduate high school. There's a farmer right now sitting on a tractor out there who's reading Emerson or Shakespeare, and you don't know what the next planet out from the sun is. You have no idea how stupid you are. How dare you say such a thing? I guarantee you that a pharmacist in Des Moines, Iowa, is infinitely better, infinitely more educated than you are, and capable of doing everything that you do better than you do it, and many, many things that you cannot do at all. And those two things together cleared my head for this trap that our friend Vlad was talking about being led into. You're one of the elites. You're one of the special people. You can move with the high-ranked people. You know, you're smart, you're good-looking, you can do all these other things. You can get into the inside of the system, and you can be pulling the strings instead of having your strings pulled. What do you think, Bill? And for 25, 30 years or something, I thought, that's great. And then I just realized, no, that's a death trap. It's the end of the world. You do not want to go down that road, my man. Don't do it. So I didn't. That's what I meant by conservatives who had been liberals. Just have to live long enough for life to beat the stupid out of you. All right, moving on. Hey, look, here's a question from Rusha Dark. I can tell because it takes up the entire page. Here we go. Topic, Empire of Terror sequel. Hi, Bill. You've mentioned that your goal with Empire of Terror was to make a watertight prosecution of communism, particularly Leninism and Stalinism, since you were tired of young leftists fawning over it and treating it like a good thing. You also said it was important in terms of understanding Putin's backstory and what's going on with Ukraine. I know your heart is set on your next pitch to Jeremy being Frank Luke in Taffy 3 movies, but I was wondering if you consider doing a version of Empire of Terror applied to the topic of slavery and colonialism. Here's my case for why I think it's necessary. It's an interesting idea. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that many leftists falsely believe slavery and colonialism originated in America and Western Europe, or that ours... I'm sorry, let me put on my cogitation spectacles here. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that many leftists falsely believe slavery and colonialism originated in America and Western Europe, or that ours were otherwise the worst possible versions of them to ever exist. Much like their ignorance of the true horrors surrounding communism, they remain ignorant of the African and Arab slave trades, Muslim conquest, various Asian empires, and so forth. Many of those horrors were either far worse than anything the West ever did, or they existed since long before America was even born and continue to this day, such as in China or the Middle East. The return of slavery in Libya, for instance, can be directly laid at Obama's hands in choosing to take out Gaddafi, leaving behind a power vacuum. Yeah, same as true in Syria and all the rest of it. The left's ignorance of these topics on a global scale allows slavery and colonialism to remain the West's original sins, ones they keep using to flog us and guilt us into giving them vast resources and undeserved power, while completely ignoring crimes against humanity abroad. Never mind the fact that not only were England and America moving among the first countries in history to eliminate slavery, not only at home, but eliminate all forms of it everywhere, the only reason the left knows about slavery as bad is because Englishmen and Americans fought and died to end it in the first place. If that's not atonement, I don't know what is. Well said. Lincoln said, if it takes every drop of blood drawn by the lash, if that has to be matched by every drop of blood drawn by the sword. So basically what he's saying is, if we have to bleed an equivalent amount of blood that this thing caused, then that's what God wants. All that to say, would you consider making a documentary series with Jeremy on these two topics like you did with Empire of Terror, following the same theme of defending the West and its ideals while tying into current events abroad? I know you said you're concerned about members, but this seems like a really important issue. It would be nice to put it to bed once and for all, and we thank you in the long run for crafting such a weapon for us. At least think about it. Much love as always, Maru. P.S. Still working on a write-up for what we talked about last week. If you're still interested, yes, whatever it was, I'm interested. And P.P.S. Now that GK is back, the three of us need to set up a time to continue with Operation Mic Drop, which I suspect has something to do with Discord, which was invented by demons in hell, designed to take normal, sensible people who had some fundamental idea that knew how to operate computers and disavow them of that knowledge. Yeah, sure, that sounds great. So, to the question... Yes, if you want to, I should find the link to it. This is a great thing about having people like Marusha and all the rest of these regulars here, Eric and all the rest of them. I can just say something. It's like a Siri that I can turn off. There is on YouTube a video that shows, I'm pretty sure it shows each single voyage of a ship that was involved in the West African slave trade. During the entire period of the slave trade, every single ship that was recorded is a dot on this thing, and the time scale moves very fast. 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 70. It's moving fast. And so what you see is a couple of little dots and a couple of little dots, and then all of a sudden, like a swarm of dots, and then it's like West Africa just explodes. Just these streams, and the streams are going essentially to one place, and that's the Caribbean or Brazil. So of the total number of slaves taken out of Africa, I think the correct number is 9% came to America. 11% was the highest I've ever heard. 9 out of the 10 slaves taken out of Africa went to Jamaica, Haiti, or Brazil, or any of the other islands in the Caribbean, Cuba. That's where they went. And so, oh, there it is. Marisha's got the link of it right there. 300 years of slavery in 2 minutes. There's a link in the YouTube. You know what? If I've got my wits about me, and we all know what likelihood that is, I'm going to open this up, and I will. Yeah, that's it. It's really good. Yeah, and the slave trade was nothing, and then suddenly it was everything, and then it just stops because English and Americans basically said, boom. By the way, people's comments there are, one person said, I went to the website and my whole soul was destroyed. And somebody made a comment about Brazil in 1889, but it was in Portuguese and I couldn't read it. So I've got this up, and I'll try and remember to post this in the link for this Stratosphere Lounge show. So I think hopefully that covers that. So what I do? This is the whole argument here. This and the, it's a I think the slavery thing is really more a show than a series. I'm sure I could do it. I don't have a burning desire to do it. But I couldn't agree more with you in terms of the fundamental need for it. If this video could be shown everywhere, then that would do 90% of the work. There are a number, I've seen a few of them, of reaction videos on YouTube. For those of you who may have been born as I was in the previous century, a reaction video is where somebody sees something for the first time on camera. So we get to react to that. Back this up here. Where'd it go? Hold on, sorry. There it is. Come on, nope. Where'd it go? Come on, baby. I can't find the old YouTube. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm dumb. There we go. Yeah, okay, we're golden. So there are a number of reaction videos where young black people get told the truth about slavery, and it knocks them on. It really knocks them out. I've said many times a very brief story, so I can repeat it. Thank you very much for the super chat. Sacred Order of Knightly Valor. Shatner is giving a guided tour through a 100% accurate rebuild of the entire Enterprise set as a Star Trek museum in Ticonderoga, New York, November 2023. Link in the chat. Ooh, that would be tempting. Okay, so I mentioned, by the way, that I took a look at Cameo at the very beginning of the show, and Vic Mignogna is in Cameo. And he looks real different than he does as Captain Kirk. So when these young black or mixed people hear the factual truth about what happened, it's like they get punched in the stomach. And the drive that story that I was telling is there was a black man got invited. This was recently. I was at the party, although I didn't see it happen. He went to, it was a conservative meeting in Hollywood, so all the Hollywood conservatives were there, all 11 of us or something. And he came with a friend, and he was not a conservative. And when he found out that he was in the middle of these conservatives, he basically said, "I'm not going to stay in the middle of you, you horrible Nazis and racists, and Republicans." And somebody said to him on the way out, "Well, just don't forget, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. It was Republicans that freed the slaves." And the guy turned to him furious and said, "Abraham Lincoln was not a Republican. Abraham Lincoln was a Democrat." No, he really wasn't. Of course he was. He said, "You got a phone on you, man. You got a phone on you." Why do I stay in California, Bill? Because of 32% humidity and no insects. This is a guy who lived in Florida for 25 years. He got out his phone and he went to Wikipedia and started looking it up. And then he had a moment where he said, "I got to sit down," because he actually got dizzy. This is his entire worldview, his entire ethical framework, his superstructure for how he makes decisions and beliefs and everything, just immediately gone. And apparently the person who told him about Abraham Lincoln said, "And Frederick Douglass," and he said, "Don't, just stop. I can't deal with Frederick Douglass right now. I just have to find a way of, processing this." So, the Confederacy was the Democratic Party leaving the Union, period. And this goes to the thing I was saying earlier. If we weren't beholden to their control of information and pop culture, this country would be voting 85% Republican. If the truth got out there, just the truth, that's all. All right, moving on, because I would like to do what I said that I am going to do. So here's a question from Eric Blake. "Are you a turtle, Mr. Whittle?" You bet your ass I am, Eric. So recently in the lounge, it was brought up that the Generation Alpha kids are, quote, more conservative and will herald a restoration, etc. I got to say, Bill, I heard that and was instantly reminded of when the exact same song and dance was about my generation. The Gen Y millennial kids are more conservative than their parents and will save America. Okay, well, as we grew up and that didn't happen, those analysts moved on to the Zoomers, more conservative, that will restore America. Yeah, no. Thus, forgive me, Bill, for refraining from counting chickens with everyone else. I'm just saying our side has an annoying tendency to take such things for granted, thereby failing to fortify said kids so our optimistic prophecies can actually happen. What say you? I say you're right about this. This generation's more conservative. This generation's more conservative. It's not that they're going to be more conservative. It's just that the alphas are going to have no choice but to be conservative. They're not going to have the luxury of being as stupid as Gen Z and the millennials and Gen X and the boomers. They're not going to have they will not have that luxury. They're not going to have the luxury of stupid beliefs. They're going to be much busier with bigger things than things like transgender bathrooms. When things start to go, they're going to be the ones that are going to do the fighting. And so, while your point is well taken, I think just through sheer default, what I've been talking about, the wrecking ball of reality, is apparently starting to look like we are now due for that 80 to 100 year cycle. We all know that we're in the fall, autumn, and heading into winter. So, there you go. I just think that I think that I'd probably be right, but maybe for the wrong reason, or at least I didn't know the reason, and I just had a hunch about the reason. So anyway, there's that. Henry Lumley. Hey, Bill, I wanted to ask if you've seen any of the interviews with presidential candidate, is it Vivek Ramaswamy? I hope I got that right, because I haven't seen him, so I hope I got that right. If you have not, can you please check out a couple of the great interviews he's done and give your thoughts on his platform? He's competing with DeSantis for second and is beating DeSantis in some polls for second. If you have not seen any of his interviews, then please do not give an opinion. He really deserves an informed opinion, and I'm hoping for a right angle on his platform and candidacy. That's an excellent idea. I included some of his best interviews. He really knocks them out of the park towards the PBD town hall and the culture war interview. So here's a couple of links. The only thing I know about him is that he's running. That's all I know about him. I have not seen him. I couldn't pick him out of a photograph. That's how I have through just random circumstances, have not encountered him. So I will, yes. So I will postpone answering your question, and your idea about turning him into his policies into a right angle is an excellent idea, because if he's saying the kind of things that many people are saying, he needs to be heard. And I think the possibility of him getting into the White House with Donald Trump is higher than it is for Ron DeSantis. We'll see. So I just have to honestly bow to that question, because I don't know, but I will go to look. GK Masterson says, I have to go to bed. Pretty tired still from running a truck down to Laredo a couple days back. Got back yesterday at 3 a.m. Brutal. Get some rest. This will be here forever. And ever and ever. And I'm not going to say the next word, because that would be just plain looking for trouble. All right, let's go to Facebook. I don't know the last time we've gone to Facebook. Honestly, I think it's been well over a year. Might be a couple years for all I know. So first time for everything. See the cycle. The big wheel turns. Big wheel turns again. But we did it. We got to Facebook. Even if we take one, we got to Facebook. And the one we are certainly going to take is the one that's showing up, because it's from top fan Charles Tomes. And I'm not going to take it because of that. I'm going to take it without fail, because his avatar is from being this big, it appears to be the cartoon Samantha from Bewitched. So yes, congratulations, absolutely. Let's see, a few more comments. Wait, okay, so this one's another beauty. Move this over just a little bit. There's 2 comments. That's one of them. So we will finish Facebook. Let me see the other one. Most relevant is selected. I don't want most relevant. I want all. Who are you to decide? Eric Blake, another. I still got a whole novel here. I'm going to basically say that in answer to Eric's question about why don't we do a long march through the cultural landscape, I think I've pretty much covered it on this episode, just in, 5 easy pieces. So we'll take Charles Tomes, and then we'll call it a night. We'll get home. My God. It's amazing what happens to your schedule when you don't, rant for an hour in advance. Here we go from Charles Tome, top fan with a diamond. So is Eric Blake, for that matter. From an undisclosed location in what remains of America, Darth Chuck the Merciless wheezes. Now that's an introduction, my friends. His introduction. Still recovering from a whirlwind, literally, of sleeplessness and loud aircraft at Oshkosh, Wisconsin, we reminisce on the time spent with Rutan Aircraft Flying Experience founder and president, is it Rajard Jadot? I'm afraid I don't know that name. This year, the world's only flying very vegans suffered total loss of oil pressure on the way to AirVenture, so being the accomplished ex-Navy fighter pilot, he dead-sticked it to a runway and promptly got in yet another one-of-a-kind aircraft, the world's only certified certificated speed canard, also owned by RAFE, which would be, I think, Rutan Aircraft Factory. No, sorry, Rutan Aircraft Flying Experience, which he flew to AirVenture, which still should be called Oshkosh as far as I'm concerned, where the world's first clean sheet certified Jet A-fueled turbo-supercharged 2-stroke V4 aircraft engine powered a Cirrus SR-22 and a Velocity V-twin from the Delta Hawk factory in Racine to fly to AirVenture. STC to come. Forms were recorded for posting on YouTube. Friends were met, new friends were made, tents were destroyed. Barry Manilow karaoke was performed by about 100,000 spectators as we waited for the fireworks guys to reboot their Windows computer 3 times. Don't ever, 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 ever mention Barry Manilow karaoke again, Charles. It's not that it's not true, it's that it is true, but we have an image to maintain as pilots and aviators, and that does not play to the brand. 4 overflow parking lots were converted into overflow camping lots to accommodate the record crowd. That's good to know, record crowd. Counting down the days to AirVenture 2024, 2025 is the 50-year anniversary of the Long Easy. I shall pilot a Long Easy in the formation overflight first, license, then 250 hours pick, then fast card. Well, that was meant an awful lot to me, and I'm sure for most of you might as well be Chinese calculus. The long and the short of it is, I have not met with the possible exception of the military, I don't know a more openly patriotic group of people than pilots. I'm not saying they're not out there. I'm just saying I haven't met any. I've often thought that the reason for this is that if flying is a passion in your life, then you don't get to be one of those people who believes in nonsense ideas because you won't survive. There's a fundamental reality about flying that everybody who decides to get in an airplane, go up by themselves, has to face. And that fundamental reality is you are allowed some mistakes. And in some cases, you're allowed quite a large number of mistakes, but you are not allowed an infinite number of mistakes. And if you make enough of them, then, you don't get to pull over and park when you're flying. So I've always found Oshkosh to be just a tremendous thing. And obviously I love airplanes. I'm not going to turn this into an airplane discussion because I've done that so many other times. The only thing I would like to say, and I don't know what your take on this is, but when I lived in Florida, Sun and Fun was obviously much closer. I was living in Gainesville for most of that time. It's about an hour and a half south to Lakeland, I want to say, for Sun and Fun. But it's the same thing, it's just a little smaller. And in the mid-90s, it seemed to me that there was a much larger variety of aircraft, that there were just so many more designs. It seems like it's really narrowed down now. The avionics continue to be amazing. When I was still flying my experimental plane, I remember looking at these things and seeing these highway in the sky things, just like in 2001, we're going through the box and all of this stuff. And obviously GPS is a game changer, but it's like any other really intense hobby. It's like, that everybody's there for the same reason. Everybody loves the same thing. And so you can bump into anybody who you've never met before and talk to them for 4 or 5 hours or argue with them. This is an interesting thing. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Andrew DeLay. Hey, Bill, ever thought of doing a meetup in Oshkosh? It's a good idea. It's a great place to do it. My enthusiasm for going to Oshkosh has been significantly eroded, but it's not what you think. And my enthusiasm for Oshkosh has been eroded in the same way that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin's enthusiasm for going to the moon was eroded after they went. It's not that I've been to Oshkosh. It's that I've been to Oshkosh with Burt Rutan. And going through the largest air show in the world, standing next to Burt Rutan, walking with him, is like going through the Vatican City with the Pope. Everything just happens. Everything just happens. It's been a couple years now, so since I told this, it might have been 2015, so well. But we flew out there in a Starship, which would be the Beech Starship, not the Elon Musk Starship. Twin pusher canard. The original design was great. Beechcraft decided to license it. They added a lot of weight and they had to put a bunch of aerodynamic fixes on there, and this kind of thing, drives Burt nuts. But nevertheless, if you just sitting at home, you got an extra tab on your browser, just Google Beech Starship. It's a beauty. It's a beauty. And I got to fly the right seat on that for most of the trip there and back from Idaho to Wisconsin. And when that year was some anniversary for Burt, I guess it must have been the 40th, because 2015, that would make sense. I think somewhere around there. So Burt was there, and And we arrived in the Starship, and the next day was going to be the flyover of Rutan aircraft. They were going to do one of everything. It was very easy. You're going to have a long easy. They had the Catbird there. They had the Boomerang, and the Starship was going to bring up the tail because it's 3 times the size of the next largest one. And Jim, who owned the Starship, said, well, Bill, I'd really like to have you in the right seat for that flyover. And I said, well, yes, sir. I've got a picture of me in the right seat of that. A big old smile on my face. I have to find that somewhere. In fact, I'll find that right now. So I'm all jazzed because not only am I at Oshkosh, I'm an actual participant at the world's largest fly-in. I am part of the Rutan celebration aircraft. For those of you unfamiliar with it who may be relatively new to the show, this just happened to be right in front of me here. Give me 1 second. This is the aircraft that I flew for a couple years, and this is designed by Burt Rutan. And I will rescale it. But I flew around in that baby for 2 years maybe. And that airplane was a load of fun. And it flew as fast as it looks. I'm not going to get into this whole thing again because it's a long topic. We've covered it several times on Stratosphere Lounge. But you look at this aircraft here, and this is important. If you wanted to fly jets for the Air Force and you were not able to because of whatever reason, your dream did not come true, you can nevertheless get this close to your dream. And honestly, with that propeller in the back, that thing flew like a jet, looked like a jet, and didn't sound like a jet, but I made jet noises in the headset as I flew the thing along. So my point is, no, I did not get to fly F-16s, but I did get to fly this, and not once, and nobody told me where to go, and that was good enough. And I owe all that to Burt because he built a fighter jet for everybody. Now, let me find this picture real quick because it's a jolly good picture if I recall correctly. Well, I might as well just go ahead and do all of the name dropping all at once, I reckon, here. Come on, where are you? Come on. Why? Here it is. I'm looking at the Oshkosh thing. There's Burt and Dick. My God, I look so very, very young. Hang on. Is at Bert's house, slacker. Come on, it's got to be here. It's not there. I know it's as exciting as the opening, but that's only because I'm trying to navigate this photo app, which you would think I would have down by now. No. All right, I'm going to give it one more chance here. I just want pictures. How hard is that library? Okay, that's it. Yes. That's it. Okay, I'm in the right place. I'm in the right-ish place. Right-ish place. Stand by. Hold on. I think I need to go backwards. I know this is tremendously thrilling. Watching a guy look for something. That's what the show is basically all about. What is the Stratosphere Lounge, Bill? Well, Stratosphere Lounge is a show where you get to come in and watch this guy, and he'll boot the thing up, and then you'll get to watch him look for something on the internet. I kept a copy of this because I thought this was... You don't even get to see me, I realize. Here, check this out. And we're back. When I was into the whole building thing, oh boy, that's a small picture. It may be too small to scale. No. That's a very big and cool looking airplane, but that canopy line is fantastic. That's what the canopy on the Long Easy should be, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a custom canopy that looked exactly like that. Hang on, let me find it. I'm practically there. Jonathan A. There's the cool shots of me in the L-39. That was a blast and a half. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Favorite picture of me. Come on. Okay, hold on. We're at Oshkosh now. We're at Oshkosh. And there's only took about 1,000 of them. We're getting very close. We're getting very close. I can feel it. Very close. There it is. And I can promise you one thing, and the thing I can promise you is that the wait will not have been worth it. That, I think, goes without saying. All right, here we go. I did manage to find it anyway. At least we had a successful end to this gigantic goat rodeo. Here's old Billy Boy in the front right seat of a beach starship, flying as air crew. So why'd I bring this up? Well, there's a good reason why I brought this up. The reason I brought this up is because I was so jazzed about this and looking forward to it so much that tomorrow it's going to be awesome. I'm going to be part of the show celebrating Burt Rutan. What a great, great, great deal. So the morning of the flyover, about, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes before we were actually going to take off, they went in to file the flight plans. I went in with everybody, and the guy who's running the safety at the, I guess it was the air boss for Oshkosh, said, and who's this guy? And Jim said, well, he's going to be sitting in the front right for clearing traffic. And he says, no, he's not. We don't it's essential. The rule for Oshkosh is absolutely essential personnel only, period. And I was fine with that. I was just fine with that. You know, I was just happy to be there and happy to be there with Bert and everything. And okay, I get it. No, that makes perfect sense to me. So I go outside and I say to Bert, I said, you know, I didn't complain to Bert. I just said, looks like the safety guys kind of nixed me on this thing, so I'll just be watching from the ground. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And Bert eyes just go wide. He says, oh, no, they're not. And he just goes walking up to this central control area at Oshkosh, opens this door. There's somebody behind the desk. It's like Jesus walked in, you know. Oh, Mr. Rutan, hello. Yes, I want to talk to the guy who's, I need to talk to the air boss or something. Yes, sir, I'll get him for you. And scoots back there, and then immediately the door opens, and the guy who 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago told me no, comes out, and I'm thinking, I didn't rat you out, man. I just said I'm not going to be part of the thing. And Bert runs up to the counter and says, this man, pointing to, took me a second to realize he was talking to me. He said, this is essential flight crew. The window on a starship is very narrow. We're going to be in constant right turns. The pilot's sitting on the left. He can't see anything. Bill needs to be in the right seat to make sure that the turns are clear. It's absolutely essential. They said, oh, of course, absolutely. He's signed off. So, after an experience like that, you know, it's just like, I'm going to go to Oshkosh again, and everything's going to be less impressive and fun than it was when I went last time. Now, if Bert goes back again, I'm going back again. But yeah, that was fun. That was really fun. Like I said, being given a tour of Vatican City by the Pope. It's amazing how many doors open there. And by the way, that was the time I first got to spend time with Dick, who, to my astonishment, asked me to go. One of those nights he was talking to a bunch of Air Force cadets, I think they were. Or they might have been Civil Air Patrol cadets. Yeah, that's what they were. They were a little younger. And so he asked me to go, and next thing I know, I'm talking to this guy who's one of the 3 finest pilots that ever lived, you know, and there you go. Okay, you know what? I think we've done it, and I think that anything beyond this, even though it's a relatively short show, it's only 1 hour and 38 minutes. We've done 4. But I believe I will call this one a day because I have a large mountain of work to do. And also, we did all the questions. I'll just grab this real quick. Bart's Treasure says, how did you and Bert meet and become friends? There was somebody who was a fan of mine and a fan of Bert's, and they gave Bert one of my videos. And Bert said, this guy's fantastic. And he looked at all the rest of them. And then I I got his email. To my utter amazement, he knew who I was, and to his utter amazement, I knew who he was, which is mind blowing to me. That's the part that most blows my mind about being with Burt Rutan, is that he's a huge fan of mine, and he thinks I'm the important one there. Delusional in his old age, but nevertheless, it's probably got the mutton chops. So so he was still living in California at the time. He had a place in Palm Springs, and so I flew out to meet him in Palm Springs. True story. I was trying to fly through El Cajon Pass, which is where all of the Pacific coast from Santa Barbara down to San Diego, that entire stretch of westerly winds that's coming in off the sea, eventually runs into these two mountain ranges. It's the biggest funnel you've ever been to, as a Venturi technically, and goes right through this pass. And I was flying out there in the Sky Arrow, which I owned before this thing, a lot less power. And I was going to meet Burt at Palm Springs Airport or Bermuda Dunes or something. And as I was getting to El Cajon Pass, it started to snow. It started to snow in California. I couldn't believe it. It snowed in California. It happened fast, too. It was one of those times where, what happened to visibility? That's when the dew point and the temperature start to meet. The air just, water just condenses, and it's like instantaneous nearly. And so I said, I could try to fly through this, pass on this, but, there's all those sharp rotating blades, and I don't particularly want to have to make a landing in the middle of all of those meat, choppers down there. So I believe I will sit this one out and land at, what is that? Is it El Cajon Airport? There's a little tiny little strip there, right there. No, it's not. I don't remember the name of it, but anyway, I landed there. So I called him and I said, Burt, I'm awful sorry. I tried to get through. It was just snowing at the pass, and I just don't think it's smart to fly through. He said, no, it's a good idea. You didn't do it. I'll drive out there. I'll be there in an hour. I said, okay. So he came out there, and we met at the airport, which is appropriate, stood around, looked at the airplane. He said, thought the canopy would be nice and stuff. He said he's moving to a remote location, and he said, you should come up for 4th of July. So I did, and I've done it probably 5 or 6 times since then. So that's how that happened. Here's my final Oshkosh story. My best experience at Oshkosh, by far, was probably would have been the 2019 Oshkosh. And it was my best experience, even though I wasn't there. During the talk, when Burt talks at Oshkosh, standing room only, always. And he was doing a talk on some project he was working on, might have been the ski gull. And in the middle of his talk, Burt essentially just stops and reads a transcribed section of my Apollo 11 What We Saw script for like 20 minutes. And he's just crying his eyes out. And listening to him read those words and watching him crying got me crying. It was the part where I was talking about that picture of Neil Armstrong after the moon landing and how he looked like a 13-year-old, like an 11-year-old boy on Christmas morning, looked out around the corner and saw a brand new bike. He's tired, he's exhausted. Actually, he's under a lot of strain, but he's just. I spent 3 or 4 paragraphs on that one picture, and he just read it. And watching Burt get that choked up over it, really, that was my best Oshkosh. I couldn't believe it, actually. I still can't believe it. So that was that. But this show, however, is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, who continue to keep the lights on here in the Magic Kingdom. And it's always fun to be here, and I always get so much from you guys. So I believe I will call it a day. Thanks again for the members for making this possible. Thanks for all of you for being here on YouTube and on Twitch. And I expect I will see you guys on Monday night for Stratosphere Studios, and I'll see if I can't have tidied up that interview that we did last time. But no promises, because I don't trust myself. So that's probably the way to bet.